141, I believe we have all of our audio fixed with Lisa Evers at WNYW. Thanks so much for hanging with us. Sorry for the issues that we had there, but you were in New York. So what's the overall feeling of the city today?
Anita, there's so much excitement in the air today. I mean, we've had an unprecedented turnout for early voting, which ended on Sunday night. There were nearly 750,000 people who came out to do early in-person voting here in this mayoral race. And a lot of them, there was a whole section, there were a lot of seniors, there were a lot of people over 55. And then there's also a big chunk of that turnout was from young people, from first-time voters, people who had newly registered coming to the polls to exercise their right to vote, which a lot of people were thinking, okay, these must be the Mamdani supporters. But there's a lot of energy. A lot of people, are talking about it. And it's really encouraging to a lot of people. And there's even talk that we may hit with the in-person voting today, which goes on until 9 p.m. our time, that they may actually reach 2 million total voters, which would be pretty close to a record, if not a record in itself in terms of turnout. So it's still too early to tell because it's mid-afternoon here, and the voting here in New York really picks up about 4 in the afternoon. You have people who picked up their kids from school, and then they'll stop to vote before they go home. People getting out of work tend to vote like around 6 or 7 p.m. That's why they keep the polls open so late, give people time to get home, whether they're on the transit system, taking a bus or a train, or whether they're driving. So it's just, there's not a tremendous amount of suspense, though, because the 3 candidates, Mamdani has been number 1 in all the polls, even though the numbers have varied. Cuomo's been a firm number 2, even though his numbers have varied. And one poll even put him within 6 points of Mamdani last weekend. And Curtis Lewa, a distant third, but he vowed to finish out the race, which it looks like he's done, and not cave into a lot of pressure that was coming to him from not from Republicans. He's running as a Republican, but also from independent candidate Andrew Cuomo, who was telling him, listen, you need to get out of the race so I can go and beat Mamdani. That was kind of an unprecedented thing that we saw here, Anita.
Yeah, there's so many different aspects of this that I think have caught people's attention. Let me ask you, do you think if Andrew Cuomo does not win, do you think it's the last we've seen of him in politics? Because he's really had such a turnaround from, at the beginning of the pandemic, people were thinking, wow, this guy is presidential material, to now maybe not even winning a mayoral race.
Well, it's interesting you're asking about that, Anita, because that's what we were all thinking, exactly what you just said when he first entered the mayoral race, and he said he's going to throw his hat in. I mean, he comes from kind of a legacy political family here in New York City with his dad, Mario Cuomo, who was a multi-term governor, has one of the most famous bridges in the area named after him, which Andrew made sure to see happened. And people thought, okay, this is going to be the same governor that we saw during COVID, holding daily press briefings, Monday through Friday and on the weekend if it was necessary, talking about the shortage of PPE. Remember that? It was like you couldn't find a can of Lysol anywhere to save yourself. Paper towels were people were hoarding paper towels, like all these things, household things we think are like just we take for granted. Were so hard to find, and they were limiting the purchase. And he was there on TV every single day, carried on a lot of the stations here in New York, saying to the federal government and to then President Trump, saying, listen, we need this. This is our workers need this. Our doctors need this. Our nurses, nursing aides, our hospital workers, all the hospital workers, the orderlies, everybody, they need this. And people thought they were going to see that tough talking guy. He was never the warm and fuzzy type of political candidate. He was never the one where you're like, oh, that's the guy that I want to go have a drink with after work or have a beer or whatever. And then the scandal of the sexual, the harassment allegations, those were never really proven because, of course, he stepped down. And, there was a lot of talk about how valid they were and that type of thing. But it's just like this was being seen as his big comeback. People are saying, okay, we're going to need somebody like this after the scandals that really crippled the Adams administration. we need somebody that can come in, that can really deal with all of these things that are going on, but from the way the government shutdown is affecting New Yorkers, the way it's affecting government workers who have to go to work and not get paid, and then on their day off wait on food lines at pantries, all of these things. And we really did not, the only time that a lot of people here really saw any kind of that fire or some sparks was in the last debate, Anita, because he just was, he lost the primary, a lot of people say, because he did not campaign. That was in June. Mamdani had been campaigning since the previous October, mobilizing the troops, being out there on social media, but more importantly, integrating the social media into, real retail, traditional politics of like people doing door knocks, canvassing neighborhoods, but all of this stuff organized on social media. So if, let's say, you and I were hanging out and we're like Saturday, oh, we want to go canvass, we want to help or whatever, you just go on your phone, check, and then you just show up. It was an incredible get out the vote effort that he's been running all along. So I think Cuomo was surprised when he lost the primary. That was the analysis a lot of people here had, and they thought, well, you know what? He's such a household name. Mamdani is so new. He'd only been a state official, a state assemblyman for a couple of years, hadn't really passed any bills, hadn't made any real headlines as a local government, state official. So people thought, oh, Cuomo will be the shoo-in, but the turnout that Mamdani had mobilized, well, we know what happened. He won by very double digits over Cuomo, and Cuomo never quite seemed to recover or understand that there was this seismic shift going on, not just with the campaigning methods, but also reaching these new voters that so many voting efforts in the past had kind of failed to mobilize. So his campaign schedules were very light. There were days when he had no events on his campaign schedule. There were days when we're calling the campaign going, you really don't have anything today. The Curtis Lewa was out everywhere, pretty much every day. Mamdani had events like every day, made sure to have a major impact event, whether it was an endorsement from one of the biggest unions here in New York City, or whether it was from a different community group. And he weathered a lot of scandals, that like scandalous accusations that were made about him, particularly being anti-Semitic. That was one. And then just also about being a tool for big business and for these billionaires. But of course, Cuomo had billionaires really behind him and pushing his campaign forward. So there were just a lot of questions. But, Andrew Cuomo, and people are saying now that he may not have been so far behind for so long if he had waged a more active campaign and seemed like he was more interested in the job and more interested in actually running New York City instead of being crowned king of New York City, which a lot of people there felt there was an air of entitlement around him. And I think that cost him a lot of votes. And now he was being, with President Trump's tweet, not tweet, but his post on Truth, his platform's Truth Social yesterday, saying you may not like Andrew Cuomo, but you have to vote for him because he's the only one that can beat Mamdani. So it's just by pretty much every angle or from every angle you look at it, this has just been an unprecedented campaign all the way around. And then you have three final candidates. So it's not like a traditional debate where you have a Republican and a Democrat, or one person and you have two people going head to head. The debates were three people, and that kind of some people felt muddied the water a little bit and diluted from the intensity between the first, the one who was in the lead, Mamdani, and then Cuomo number two. But Anita, just like one thing after another that we didn't expect, and then we'll see what happens today, if it's going to play out the way the polls have been predicting it would, with Mamdani having a significant win. We'll see, but it's New York. Anything can happen, Anita.
For sure. On a final note, obviously, we talked about the controversies with former Governor Andrew Cuomo. There are a lot of people who take Zohran Mamdani's stances on several different issues as being controversial in and of themselves.
No, absolutely. His comments about Hamas have come out where there was an old post or an old video that surfaced where he was saying he thought that Hamas should always be armed, and of course that resonated terribly within many quarters of the Jewish community, because we have a diverse Jewish community here in New York City. They were very upset about that, especially as President Trump is trying to go through and work out this peace deal. And there's still a tremendous amount of tension with that. People who lost loved ones in the October 7th, 2023 assault on Israel, attacks on Israel, they're still waiting. Some of them are still waiting for the remains of their loved ones to come back. There was another photo that surfaced of Mamdani with a Ugandan official who was very well known in Uganda, which is where he was born, and where she had a very strong anti-gay stance. In fact, at one point in her career, within the last 10 years, she was calling for gays to be executed. And it was a very harsh stance, and she was the prime supporter of this harsh law. Mamdani, I thought for sure in New York, because we have a very large LGBT and very active and politically savvy LGBTQ population here, that would have gotten more traction. That was a 1 day or day and a half story here. And he answered it by saying he didn't really know who the woman was when he took a picture of her, which people were going, wait a minute, your dad was there, your dad was been close to her, you had to know who she was. But it just kind of went poof like that, and then on to the next thing. So that didn't resonate. I think the Jewish question is pretty big. And then it was also with the, we have a very strong African-American middle class here of homeowners and union workers, lifelong union workers here in New York City. And he really did not do much early on to reach out to some of these organizations. There's a lot of organizations, and eventually he did go to a few churches, which a lot of people saw as kind of symbolic. So it's hard to say how and there's a lot of black registered voters here in New York City. It's going to be hard to say how they, whether they're taking him, and they're adults. So are they looking at that? They're not necessarily following every move on social media. Are they following him? Are they upset by his lack of experience? Do they feel more comfortable with Cuomo? Or some people say, there was a phrase that I heard as I was reporting and throughout the campaign, hold your nose and vote for Cuomo. We may not like the guy. The guy may be a little creepy. That's the way people see him, but he's going to run. He knows how to run things. He knows how to manage. I mean, New York is a very large and difficult city to manage. There's so many entities, so much of the funding for anything you want to do, whether it's public housing, whether it's food programs, whether it's medical assistance, that there's city, state, and federal entities involved, and that's like a complex matrix, of all these different agendas and different people that you have to know, and you have to know how to navigate it. So there's just a lot of questions. So I think the black vote is a big question. According to the polling with the Jewish vote, younger Jewish voters were more inclined to be favorable towards Mamdani. The older Jewish voters across the board, whether they were Orthodox or whether they were are Reformed, that depending on that, how religious they were pretty much opposed to Mamdani, and were definitely going into the Cuomo's camp, according to the polls, the pre-election polls, and some of them going to Sliwa. But it's just, it's going to be really interesting to see what the results are and how they break down, because New York is at a crossroads right now. Mayor Eric Adams, his administration was scandal scarred, but he came in saying, I'm going to bring safety with justice, meaning he's going to bring safety for everybody, public safety for everybody, without having these cops that are out there targeting people of color or targeting unarmed individuals for no reason, basically bringing justice, which he did. He succeeded in doing that, but he could just never get that momentum back after his case, after he was charged with faced the corruption charges, which were basically tabled, in effect dropped, but tabled. And, he delivered that. So it's kind of wide open now. The next mayor will at least have a plan for that underway. But Mamdani, you were asking about the controversial comments. The other big one was defund the police. I have people, I'm active on social media. People on social media who used to be anti-cop, after they see the crime, after the crime rises, after COVID and everything like that, they're like, bring back the cops. We will bring back this. We want police in our neighborhood. All of this, and you didn't hear so much this term over policing. It was more like, we need cops on the subway. The subway's crazy. People are bringing swords on the subway. They're pushing people on the tracks. They're attacking women. They're doing all kinds of insane things, and people are just trying to take the train to get home from work, or get to work, or get to wherever they have to go. So there were controversial comments, but nothing was, I think a lot of us thought there was going to be like a defining moment of some kind in this campaign, and there really hasn't been one. There's just been this continual churn of uncertainty and expectation. I think that's the way I would say it, Anita.
Well, we will see what happens today. Thank you so
Yes, we
much for
will.
giving us a wrap up. Again, from being right there, you have more context than what we have looking from the outside in. So thank you for your time.
All right, thanks so much, Anita. Great to be with you, and shout out to everyone in Chicago. Take care.
Take care. Take care.
Okay.